Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Super Lunch Bros Podcast, episode number 67. I am Brendan. Woo! All right. Sorry about last week. Misha Tate won last week. This is, last week. I was on vacation. I was out in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming. Literally no service, no anything. I couldn't even watch the fights. I just, I don't. How did I find out about it? I think at one point we went by a TV and it was being covered on ESPN. That's how I found out Misha Tate won. Anywho, we're gonna talk about UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. Great fight night. Lots of cool fights. Interesting judging decisions as usual. I feel like I say that every week now. We're gonna talk about drugs again in the UFC. We just have to. I think it's gonna be mandatory at this point. Every single TJ fight. So. All right. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, find anybody who's interested in MMA or especially the UFC. This is all I talk about. I love this stuff. Please comment down below. Let me know what I said that was stupid. Tell me what you think about the fights. Who do you think won the main event? Because I know there's some controversy there. Anyway, really appreciate it. Please do that. Please get the word out. I really love doing this stuff, and I'd love to interact with more people through this medium. All right. Dillashaw getting the win via split decision against Corey Sandhagen. Before we get started, I'll get... You know what? No. We're going to talk about the fight first, and then we'll talk about the controversy and the other BS afterwards, okay? So, going into this fight, I was very worried that TJ was either A, going to be rusty, the game was going to pass him up, he wasn't going to be as smooth as he usually is. He wasn't going to have the timing that he normally does. Maybe worried about his cardio for obvious reasons we'll talk about later. And then, Corey Sandhagen is just a beast. He's really good. His precision is unreal. He's got awkward timing, awkward stances and styles. He's also very tall for the division. He's really crafty. He's lanky. He's very weird as a fighter, and he just puts it all together so well. And, honestly, he's probably, top 3. Right? I know he was the number 1 ranked, but, what I mean is, it's Peter Yan, Aljo, and Corey Sandhagen on any night. I think they could all switch wins with each other, barring whatever happens with Aljo and Yan the next time. We'll see. Yan was winning that last fight. Aljo looked like crap. Anywho, all right, so... TJ looked sharp and fast in that first round. Really, really good. He was shucking and jiving pretty well. Corey was able to catch him a little bit, but then he got the takedown and dominated him on the ground super easy. Left his leg in a leg lock and popped his knee out, which apparently, So after the fight, we found out that he tore his MCL in training. He had a cut open up in training, and that's why they had to cancel the last fight. It was a really bad one. It actually opened up during this fight. And that during the fight, he popped his knee out and he couldn't put pressure on it anymore. So let's go round by round because I wanna talk about what I saw here. In the first round, 13 for Dillashaw, significant strikes, right? 13 for Dillashaw, 15 for Sandhagen. But with the takedown in the first round, the control, and I believe he did a decent amount of damage, I'm okay with Dillashaw getting the first round. I firmly believe that was his round. Second round, 26-12. You could clearly see TJ was not able to move. He wasn't able to get out of the way. He caught a lot of big shots from Sandhagen. Credit to TJ, recovery, chin, and his movement well stunned is still there. Thought he did great when he was under pressure. Sandhagen looked sharp in that second round, and he was really putting it on him. So, round 2, Sandhagen. Round 3, 26 strikes for Dillashaw, 23 for Sandhagen. I know the strikes don't mean everything, but I believe they both did equal amounts of damage in the rounds that we're talking about here, the ones I'm going to highlight, and the ones that I say, honestly, it's the TJ rounds that were pretty close, and I believe, he landed more strikes. So, and he had more dominant position. So he started pushing Corey against the fence, and he started keeping him there, controlling the pace a little bit and keeping the distance very tight. Third round, outstruck him, out-controlled him. I know he might have taken a little bit more. I don't think it was that much more damage, if there was more damage in the third round. It was very close, but because of the control and outstriking him, TJ gets the third round. Fourth round, clearly Sandhagen's. There's no argument here. It looked really good for TJ up until the last couple seconds when Sandhagen landed a big spinning back fist and wobbled him. One of the judges gave it to TJ. I think that's a bad look, but I could see if you didn't catch that last part, because TJ shook it off pretty well. He didn't drop from it, so you could. Notwithstanding, maybe you give it to TJ, but I still don't see it. He was outstruck, out damaged in that round. That was Sandhagen. So going into the fifth, I actually had it 2-2. This is how I scored it live, and going back here and looking, and then I watched it one more time this morning. Again, I agree with my initial assessment. Round 5 for me really came down to just who did more, because the amount of damage was equal. So the cut was damage from earlier, so that doesn't count towards damage later on, right? So you cause a cut, you cause a knockdown, whatever, it only applies to that round. So when he popped, TJ's knee out, first of all, it didn't show, like he didn't drop on the ground or exclaim or, cry in pain or anything like that. So it's hard to know that unless you're specifically looking for that. Like, obviously the announcers called it out that something might have been wrong with his knee, especially when he walked back, but that was after the round. You can't count it as damage done during the round after the round is over, right? You score the round immediately afterwards. Everything that happened inside that round is what happened and can be scored. If, let's say, you have a lingering effect of being rocked after the round is over and you fall down, that does not matter. I know it doesn't look good, right? And going forward, obviously, being on the opposing side or your own team or whatever, the announcers can harp on it all they want. What I mean is, scoring a round means from minute 5 to second 0, you score what happens in there, right? So I'm emphasizing this because the accumulative damage might have been more on TJ, but the round-by-round damage, I believe, it went back and forth. That's exactly what happened. And in the fifth round, got another takedown, he landed more strikes, 40-38, okay? And he was more active, 88-83, right? So, he outlanded him in the fifth round. I felt like he did more, and he was pushing him. He was controlling the fence again, controlling him on the fence again. I gave it to TJ, and I might be a little clouded because I do love TJ, but I really like Corey. And honestly, I thought they were going to give it to Corey because of the accumulated damage. Not that that's the right decision to make here, okay? Was it a close fight? Absolutely. Is it a coin flip in the fifth round? Possibly. I lean towards TJ, but I could understand if you gave it to Corey. There's no robbery here, okay? We're not talking about what happened earlier in the night. We're talking about a very close fight with two highly skilled individuals. But let me talk about this now that we know what transpired, right? It was a split decision that went towards TJ. He popped his knee out in the first round and couldn't see for out of his right eye. He had a lot of problems seeing out of his right eye for the whole fight, and he still managed to make adjustments. He managed to make the adjustments, keep his wits about him enough to keep it close. Now, I understand if you're mad maybe because you don't like those things. We're going to talk about that in a second. But he was able to keep moving, adjust his game plan enough in anybody's eyes who's watching that fight to keep it close. All right, this fight was razor thin, and he did all of that, changing everything up completely because his game plan was to take him down, which he did easily in the first round by using the hook, throwing the hook around, pushing him to the ground, and I think he said that was a big part of his game plan. He tried it a couple times in the second round, and we saw that, and he had to make the adjustment because it wasn't working anymore. Like he said, his knee would pop out when he was trying it. So, how amazing is it that he can come back after this long layoff and look so good? Okay, you don't understand. I don't know if you guys understand what it's like to not compete in a sport or not do something for a long period of time. Yes, there is this muscle memory and training for something after you had been a master of it or doing it for a very long time. It's easier to get back into it if you lapse for a while. But there's no substitute for being in competition with someone else. The nerves, everything else, it just takes over again. And to just outright embrace all that, and yes, like he said, he got caught in those things because he was lazy. On his lazy day, when he's getting caught with stuff, he still keeps it tight enough to where he can get a split decision. And in fact, if he didn't hurt his knee, which did happen because of the fight, and he made a mistake, so fair play, that happened during the fight and because of direct action from Corey Sandhagen. So I'm not going to give it like if this didn't happen, then TJ's going to kick his ass. Which, let's say, what I'm trying to get at is if TJ's fresh and really on point, I don't think this fight was as close as it was. I'm sorry to say it, guys, for the haters out there, people who just don't like TJ. Not the haters necessarily. Maybe you really disagree with him on a personal level. Maybe you don't like the whole beef with Team Alpha Male. Maybe you don't like the fact that he popped positive for drugs. Whatever the reason for you not to like it, I'm sorry to tell you this, but he's a really good fighter. Okay, he was before the ban, and he still is now. He just took on the number one contender in the world, right? Or number two, right? Hold on. Now that I think about it. Yeah, he's number two. Obviously, Peter Yan's number one. So he just took on the number two contender in the world at bantamweight and beat him. On, if you go by the global results, like maybe it's 30% of people think TJ won. Regardless, I think it should have been a lot closer. I would have, like I said, I totally understand if you gave it to Sandhagen, that's okay. But in my opinion, TJ did enough to get it done. And if he didn't, guys, he's that good. Okay, I think this puts to bed the argument, or not puts to bed, but I think it makes a very strong argument for TJ being the GOAT of bantamweight. I really do. Like, it's hard to argue against it when you look at his resume. Took on the arguably the pound for pound great, in Hennenbrau. You can call him a paper tiger or whatever you want, but it was what it was at the time, and he just demolished him for 5 straight rounds. Okay? And arguably, I don't think he's lost in the past 6 years. I don't think he lost that fight to Dominic Cruz. And one of the judges agrees with me. It was very close, and I gave him 3 of those rounds. Could have been 4. Like, that's what I'm saying is, like, he might have had close fights, but these are with the best of the best. And the other argument for Dominic Cruz being the greatest of all time, it's not a bad argument, but as far as the UFC goes, his resume isn't as good, right? If you count that, because that fight was so close, like, let's call it basically a draw, okay? So they can't beat each other. I know that Dominic Cruz got the nod, but can we all agree that, that fight was razor thin again, and I would probably have given that, just like we all know Valentina Shevchenko won the second fight against Nunes, right? We all know that. People want to dismiss it or whatever, but we saw what we saw, and we know that. Dominic Cruz versus TJ Dillashaw, I still think, I've watched that again. TJ won that fight for me, right? I'm not mad. I don't think it's a horrible decision. It's just TJ won that fight. So the resume that TJ has strung together is incredible. And his championship reign, the fact that he lost his belt and he had to fight his way back to the belt, even though that Cody Garbrandt gets an immediate, the UFC was trying to push Cody Garbrandt so hard, and TJ shut that down twice. Twice he shut that down. Cody goes up there and gets the belt with one of the best performances he's ever had in his entire life. Catches TJ in the last 10 seconds, starts talking shit, and you're saying, you're not going to make it out of this round. No, he's not, because he's going to knock you out. Like, I don't like what the UFC did with Cody Garbrandt. I don't think Cody Garbrandt deserved the title shot when he got it in the first place. I've made my thoughts clear on that. Anyway, we got to talk about the drug usage. We just have to. All right. So before we get into this again, I'm going to try to keep it brief because I find myself talking about this a lot. So I'm going to try to keep it brief this time. TJ Dillashaw popped for EPO. Okay? It is a banned substance, just like everything else on the banned substance list. Okay? Whether it's something innocuous or less effective or anabolics, right? It's on the ban list, therefore he ingested, and he knowingly ingested it. Did he break the rules? Absolutely. and he served his punishment for it, 2-year suspension. There have been a litany of fighters who have failed the tests and don't get the hate that TJ got. I don't understand it. Is it because he admitted to it? Is it because he came out and said that he made a mistake and apologized for it instead of just lying out his ass? Lest you forget, Anderson Silva, arguably the GOAT, right? We've been over this before. I have GSP above him, but Anderson Silva, it can go back and forth. You can make the argument and convince me on any given day, and then I'll go right back to GSP when I'm not talking to you. But that's what I'm saying. Anderson Silva, arguably the GOAT, right? People love him. Failed. Bad, right? Remember that whole debacle? No, he's normal. It's normal. He was on stuff. He was taking things. Was it his whole career? Or was it just that one fight? Who knows? Probably his whole career. John Jones failed multiple tests. Yeah, and I think he gets a proper amount of hate. Like, he failed for a test after the pre-DC fight. The fight that he knocked a DC out in, like, everybody's talking about, like, that's one of the great, whatever. It wasn't a win. It was a no contest because he failed. So you can't put that on your resume. And here's another one for me. Brian Ortega. Someone brought it up. I haven't thought about it in a while because he just doesn't fight very often, and he hasn't fought in forever. I know he just beat the Korean Zombie or whatever, but failed for anabolics in his first fight in the UFC. He had served a 2-year suspension. Where's the hate for him? Why don't people bitch about this? Why is this not constantly brought up about Brian Ortega? Is it because he's not ripped? Is that what this is? That TJ's like shredded? Guess what, guys? He didn't pop for testosterone. He didn't pop for a steroid. He popped for EPO, which increases the amount of red blood cells in the body, therefore giving you the ability to absorb more oxygen and, improves your cardio. Okay? It's a very common drug used in Tour de France. That's what he popped for. Didn't pop for anabolics. So yes, it allows you to put in more work effectively, which anabolics do as well, but they also increase protein synthesis, which increases the amount of muscle mass you can gain in any given period given the same amount of work as everyone else. Blah, 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 blah. That's my disclaimer. My feelings on this stay the same every time. I don't think it's that big of a deal because most people in professional sports are on something. They're doing something, guys. Okay, most people. It's over 50%. Something like in the NFL is like closer to 85 or 90%. NBA probably the same because they don't really test for stuff. I mean, they do a little bit, but NHL, I'm sure those guys are doing stuff too. I'm not as familiar with the drug usage in that. Like, I don't have, any information where I've heard or listened to people talking about that kind of thing. Baseball, we know the issue with that. And again, I'm not going to go totally into it, but I'll say this. Sports have never been fair. This whole fair thing has never existed. Someone is always looking for an advantage. Someone is always looking for that next edge in the game, right? Someone is always going to bend the rules just enough or break the rules just enough to get that win. It's going to happen. Whether it be actively cheating in the game. Let's stick to MMA. Whether it be grabbing the fence, kicking someone in the nuts, poking someone in the eye and not changing it, grabbing the shorts, and missing weight, grabbing the top of the cage, illegal strike to the back of the head, striking to a downed opponent, or knees or kicks to the head of a grounded opponent. Guys, there's no such thing as fair play. It's never existed. I'm sorry if you live in this world where you think sports were clean at some point. They've never been. And if you want to talk about, oh, well, they weren't doing drugs. Yes, they were. Since the beginning of all modern sports, they've always been doing drugs. You want to go back? You're going to tell me back in the day, like 1,000 years ago, doing sports, they're not doing some sort of, like, they're not chewing on some plant that gives them energy? Dude, in the 20s, cocaine was in everything. You're going to tell me every baseball player wasn't on cocaine at some point in the 20s? This is in like the amphetamines in the 70s and the 80s or whatever. Like drugs have always been a part of sports because it increases performance. So therefore they're going to do it. So now you can make an arbitrary decision on which drugs are allowed and which drugs aren't, and then decide to take away people's careers and money because, you know, your organization is trying to keep the sport safe. And I'm going to just get back to that as being my main point here. Show me some fucking data that tells me that the sport is safer since USADA has been involved in it. Show me the data. All points, or all information and statistics point to that it isn't. It's either the same or worse. Let's just say it's the same. Then what's the difference? What are we doing? Your whole reason for being there was predicated on safety, making the sport fair and safe for everyone to compete in it. How is it safer? Show me. It's not. Knockouts, injuries. Are you going to talk about long-term health and safety? You have no fucking information to prove that anything that you're doing is helping long-term. Zero. We barely have like good information on combat sports for long-term damage, like body damage as it is. Anyway, he broke the rules, and I've also made it very clear, and if I haven't, I'm going to say it right now. If you break the rules, you have to accept the consequences. And what did TJ do? He outright said, sorry, I screwed up. Listen, my white blood, I forget what indicator or marker dropped below the normal levels, but one of them did. And when it did that, he started taking EPO, right? He started taking EPO to get the levels back up where they normally should be, just to be a normal human being so he could function, because he was cutting weight, it was very unsafe, and he's going down to 125. I think that whole thing was a mistake. I don't think that was a good idea from the start. Never really understood why he was doing it. He's a giant dude. So, last thing I'll say on this, not the last thing, I'm trying to get a couple more points out of here before we move on, because I think this is a really big story, and I think it's important to really lay down the foundation going forward, because everything from this point is going to be marred on TJ's career, and everything before has already. He outright admitted why he did it. He told you exactly when he did it, and they went back and tested all the samples, and they came back clean for every other fight. You guys don't have a leg to stand on. You think, pick your favorite fighter. I don't care who he is. Can you honestly tell me with 100% certainty you know he's never done anything illegal in the UFC? Or banned by the UFC? You can tell me with 100% certainty. No, you can't. Because you don't follow him around, even if you know him personally. You're not with him 100% of the time, and if you are, that's really weird, but maybe you do know then, okay? I'm going to go ahead and say you don't do that, you haven't done that, you're not going to do that, and you don't know that. Because it's impossible to know 100%. The only way we find out is the people who get caught. You think they catch everyone? Think about all the people who break the laws. Just in your daily life. I'm just talking about even like speeding, littering, loitering, jaywalking, walking across the street outside of a crosswalk, not using your indicator when changing lanes. I know I'm using a lot of traffic ones because it's easy and everybody kind of does this. How many people get caught doing that? Probably less than 1%. And I know this is a silly analogy when it comes to percentages, but what I'm trying to get across here is that just because something's illegal doesn't mean people aren't going to do it. And just because something's illegal doesn't mean everybody who chooses to do it is going to get caught doing it. All right? So save it. I don't care. This is why it doesn't affect my decision making when it comes to like who I think is the best fighter. Who do I think could beat who or whatever. Drugs don't matter to me because I just assume everybody's on them or has been or doesn't want to and they compete without it. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. It just please. For those of you who are taking a hard stance saying drugs shouldn't be allowed in sports, take a long, hard look at every sport you've ever watched and tell me those people aren't on drugs and your favorite player wasn't on drugs. Chances are you're probably wrong. You might not be. There might be a chance that you're not, but you're probably wrong because most of them are. That's how I can say that blatantly, is that most of them have done some sort of illegal substance at some point to help them in their career. Now it's the last thing I'll say. Every one of you guys who is bitching, okay? And here's the other thing. If you're making the argument that you think that this sets a bad example for people coming up in the sport and you don't want your children to be people to advocate that drugs are good for you and then you don't want your children following in their footsteps, holy crap, do I empathize. I'm sorry if I didn't say that outright, and if you made it this far through my rant, I do, I empathize with that. I really do. Because I understand that feeling. I have children. And I wouldn't want them to damage their body, especially in adolescence, trying to attain some stupid goal that doesn't work out for 99% of the people who do it. And damaging their body, like I said, damaging their body in the process, or taking in foreign bodies, exogenous hormones. I don't want them to do that. So it's my job as a parent to be active in their life and tell them, hey, you don't do these things when you're developing. It's the same reason why we don't let kids drink or smoke or do those things. But as an adult, you can do those things because you're only harming yourself. Right? We have laws to protect other people. We do. You drive drunk, you go to jail. That's why that law exists, is to protect the others on the road. Right? If you're on drugs and you hurt somebody, that's assault or attempted murder or whatever you want to call it. So that's a crime, and we have a rule for that. Punishing these fighters because you think that they shouldn't do it because you don't want your kids to do it doesn't hold any water for me. I empathize with you because I don't want them to do that stuff. I really do. But that argument doesn't hold water because I'm guaranteeing you tell your kids that drinking's not okay. Right? But adults drink all the time. Why shouldn't a child drink? I see adults doing it. They're doing pretty good. They do it in movies. They seem pretty on the ball. This is a famous person. He does this. She does that. I should do that. No, you don't want to do that. It's bad for you. Plastic surgery is not good. Trying to be that skinny is not good for you. It's unhealthy. Being overweight is unhealthy. Don't do that. You're already doing it as a parent. You're already doing the work. So let's not be mad at these guys because of some arbitrary thing that was made up, 50, 60 years ago by some assholes who are getting paid off by someone else because they wanted to say that one thing was banned and one thing shouldn't be. They don't care about you. They don't care about your kids. All they care about is money. That's all they care about. And I am specifically talking about USADA in this example. All they care about is money. They don't give a shit about you, your family, the fighters, none of that stuff. Doesn't matter. It's just a money thing. Just like WADA. They don't care. They don't care. So, like I said, I empathize with you if you don't want I understand that you don't want your children's idols to be doing unhealthy behaviors for an adolescent, right? But as a parent, you're already doing the work to show them that things aren't healthy, and they shouldn't be doing them until they're older. So yeah, let's dial it back a bit. Let the athletes compete. If they break the rules and they get caught, so be it. as far as I'm concerned, the stuff inside the cage is more egregious than the stuff outside. The stuff outside just allows you to get in there, right? Yeah, you're bigger, stronger, you have better cardio, whatever. I don't care about that stuff because everybody can do that. They can. It's the stuff when you're in there, grabbing the cage, hitting below the belt, behind the head, poking the eyes. I have zero tolerance for that stuff because that's actively, during the fight, impeding the fight or breaking the rules that we set out in place. That's what makes the fighting, right? Those rules are what make MMA what it is. So you either follow them or you get punished for not following them. That's the end of it. Stuff outside, and that, like I said, the rules are in place right now, and I'm all for people getting punished when they're caught. I really am. I'm not here to excuse people's bad behavior and breaking the rules and saying it's okay. I'm across the board. I think they should be punished when they get caught. I really do, because I think that's an important distinction. If you have a rule set in place, whether you agree with it or not, you have to serve the punishment if you break that rule. It is what it is. All right. Anyway, for all of you guys still hating on TJ and really mad that he broke the rules and he did drugs, keep that same fucking energy when Brian Ortega goes out there, please. Keep it, because you better have that exact same attitude towards him for the exact same reason. I don't care that he's pretty or he doesn't look buff. He took anabolics. That's as bad as it gets for what the non-informed or the less informed people would say. He's on steroids. That's the worst thing possible. Okay, good. Hate him, please. I don't hate him. I don't like. He's not my favorite fighter. I don't really dislike him. I don't like how they've propped him up and gave him another title shot so soon. But it has nothing to do with his drug use. It's about his fighting skill, his ability, the way he's been treated by the organization, all the things. That's how I judge fighters, their character, who they are as a person, that kind of stuff. That's how I pick my favorite fighters, who I enjoy watching, their style, that stuff. Whether they do drugs doesn't mean anything to me. But if it means something to you, you better be fucking rooting for Volkanovski. You better, because he's a drug cheat, just like TJ is. And you better hate Anderson Silva, because he's a drug cheat, just like TJ. You better hate John Jones. In fact, there's a long list of people that you should hate, and I bet you one of them is your favorite fighter. Anywho, all right. A co-main event: Phillips versus Paiva. Good fight. I mean, a really good fight. Kyler Phillips with Raulian Paiva. First round, Kyler Phillips did a ton of damage. I would have given it a 10-8. I really would. I think he did enough damage to warrant a 10-8. He almost finished him like 3 times in the first round, and then he just faded. Paiva picked it up, able to win round 2 and round 3. Should have been a 28-28. Oh, man. Oh, I don't know why. Coming back to my house, my allergies are kicking back in. It's almost like I'm allergic to dogs and cats. It's a stupid decision, bad in my opinion, because I think that warranted a 10-8 round in the first. But hey, it wasn't the worst one on the card. We'll get to that in a minute. Darren Elkins versus Derek Minner. Minner is high energy, so fast. Holy moly, he's quick. And dude, watching that fight, he was going for submissions nonstop, trying to get him in guillotines, put him in a mounted triangle, transition to an armbar. Dude, he just would not stop going for submissions in that first round. But Elkins, man. Dude, Elkins. If you want a blood and guts fighter, just a grinder, somebody who just doesn't quit, it's Elkins. I know there's other fighters too, and I've probably highlighted that too. But watching that guy, dude, it's like watching a sports movie every time he fights for me. He's the underdog, which he was. He's the underdog, and he's going out there and he's just getting beat, and he just doesn't quit on himself. Comes back and gets the win every time, man. He didn't take that much damage in the first round, especially for an Elkins fight. They call him Darren the Damage. He explained afterwards, he has like really like his skin tears really easy, so that's why he bleeds a lot, and that's where the damage nickname came from. But like his bones, his chin, all that stuff, rock solid, dude. I love watching Darren Elkins fight. Any day of the week, I'll watch him fight. I think he's fantastic. I'm gonna be sad when he's not fighting anymore, or if he falls off and can't take a punch, because he's an inspirational fighter to watch. A guy who just never quits, man. Or that last Gregor Gillespie fight comes to my mind too. He's just one of those things where you just keep pushing. Something I wish I had a little bit more of in my own life. All right, Costa versus Yanez. Oh wait, no. Whoop. No, we got to cover this one first. Miranda Maverick versus Macy Barber. Barber never found her range. She did a little bit in the third round. Maverick was as strong as Barber, so Barber's takedowns weren't really working. But in the third round, Miranda she didn't gasp, but you could tell, Barber's pressure was kind of wearing on her, and Barber had better cardio, so she was able to kind of impose her will in the third round only. Didn't come anywhere near a finish in the third round, but I easily won the third round. This was a 29-28 fight for Miranda Maverick. But it wasn't, because the judges somehow gave the first or second round to Macy Barber. Bad call. This was not the worst judging decision, because the round wasn't like the 2 rounds weren't complete blowouts, But Maverick clearly won them. It wasn't close either, right? But it wasn't a blowout. Like, it was just that's a clear 10-9 round for Miranda Maverick. She won the first 2 rounds. Yes, she gassed a little bit in the third round and really wasn't able to put up much of a fight and was losing the third round, arguably lost the third round. Doesn't matter. That's not how we score fights here, guys. Doesn't matter what happens in the last 10 seconds if I won the first 2 rounds, unless it's a 10-8. Understand, when I say that stuff, I mean, like, generally speaking, if it's 10-9s going back and forth here, right? So every round I'm describing here is a 10-9. If you rock me or do damage or put me in a submission and almost finish me, oh my God, with 1 second left, doesn't matter if I won the first 2 rounds. If you don't get a 10-8, I win. That's just how the scoring system works, and we have to have it. This is how we fight. This is how they train. Blah, 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 blah. That being said, Miranda Maverick won that one. That was a bad judging decision. Some interesting ones. That's, I think, one of the reasons why people were so upset that TJ won the fight, is they saw there was a bad call earlier. All right, Adrian Yanez versus Randy Costa. Costa coming out like a bat out of hell, landing big shots. Yanez with a great... So Costa with a great jab, busting up Yanez in the first. Straight punches were beating Yanez to the... beating him to the punch. His straight punches were going faster, right? So he was doing everything down the line, straight punches, and they were very fast, and he was snapping on Yanez. But at one point, Costa seemed to step wrong and hurt his left leg. And after that, I think that played into him losing his movement and being more stationary and getting hit. Kind of saw that he wasn't moving right in the second round and got caught, and just Yanez overwhelmed him with punches. So a good fight, though. It's fun to watch. So let's go some prelims here. We had Brendan Allen versus Punahele Soriano. Puna is what they call him. Brendan Allen, just racking him up, man. Racking him up. Looking good. Solid win, solid performance, great chin, solid striking. Happy for him. I want him to keep moving up. He's a very good, well-rounded fighter. He doesn't strike me as championship material, but neither did Michael Bisping, and he grinded his way to a championship. So anything can happen, and it's at middleweight. So, there could be some weird stuff can happen. Imavov versus Ian Heinisch. Yeah, Imavov gets a TKO in the second round. Heinisch just wasn't managing distance very well, and he was always on the back foot. Doing decent amount of damage to the front leg of Imavov, but not able to slow him down. Mickey Gall versus Jordan Williams. I don't know who Jordan Williams is, but he's 9-5 now. Mickey Gall 7-3. Mickey Gall was undefeated coming into the UFC, I believe, and his 3 losses are all in the UFC. Here's a quick note. So Gall was land a big right hand in the first round and inside the clinch and wobbled Williams, which was crazy. Gall was striking way too much after that because he kept getting caught by Williams, and I was worried that Gall was going out. Gall had a really tight guillotine that turned into he rolled Williams over and put him into mount, and then he got his back because of that and got the rear naked choke for the finish. He has the second most submissions in welterweight history with 5. The record is 6. There's a bunch of people with 5, like a bunch of people with 6. Can we agree that's weird? Mickey Gall, like a middling welterweight fighter here, has the most submissions. I guess it's because of his competition and who he's fought and all, but still, I think that's a little weird. This has happened before. Like, other welterweights in the UFC have fought lesser competition for an extended portion of their career. Like, this does happen sometimes. And nobody else has done this. So, I think that's kind of cool. All right, Mickey, you're so fine. Let's see. Julio Arce versus Andre Ewell. Ewell managed the distance pretty good early on with long strikes and some decent front kicks. Arce countering well and getting Ewell's timing down, although he was getting caught when he was moving in. In the first round, a left hook from Arce rocked Ewell a little bit, and then they brawled a little bit. They brawled some more in that first round. They're going back and forth and kind of like stepping toe-to-toe and then swinging at each other a little bit. Ewell is just moving back the whole fight and trying to not counter necessarily, but lead from behind. It was really weird. He just hits really hard, and he was hoping for a knockout, I think. And it was an interesting stoppage because Arce ends up getting the TKO finish. He rocked Ewell, absolutely, and put him up against the fence, and then, was throwing a barrage of strikes trying to get him out of there. But Ewell looked like he was with it a little. I mean, obviously he was rocked, but he was still defending himself. Not a bad stoppage. It was just interesting because I've seen fights go longer. Here's my take on it. I thought it was a good stoppage because of the magnitude of the fight, and I don't think I've been fair in the past couple weeks as far as stoppages go. I think the magnitude of a fight dictate whether or not a stoppage can be good or bad. Because if the magnitude's not very high in the fight, like for the immediate consequences, right? So obviously a win in the UFC, the magnitude's always high because, money and fame and moving up the ranks and possibility of getting a title shot, blah, 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 blah. But, when it's 2 unranked fighters, not fighting, fighting on the prelims, I'm okay with an earlier stoppage to prevent some damage. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always... Like, there is a perfect stoppage. We've been over this. It's that one punch, the fighter doesn't get up, but he's not, you're not beating him to a bloody pulp. Good. I thought it was a fine stoppage. Let's go with that. If he threw a couple more strikes, I wouldn't have been mad. If it was stopped earlier, I probably would have been more upset. Fun fight while it lasted. Not very it wasn't a ton of strikes going back and forth, but interesting, like kind of counter battle a little bit. I know Ewell wasn't countering as well. Anyway, Sijara Eubanks versus Elise Reed. Don't know who Reed is. She was 4-0 before this. Eubanks was the largest favorite on this card. She is now 8-6, so she does not drop to 500 as a fighter, so that's good. She looks really good at 125, like physically. Right, she looks like a really stout 125. She looks leaner, right? At 135, she was just too big. She was just too chunky, and she was too short. Really couldn't bully anybody. But at 125, I think that's her weight class. And like she said, she does have a win over Lauren Murphy, who is fighting for the title. Somehow, I mean, we're all going to witness a murder. Anyway, Diana Belbita versus Hannah Goldie. Who? Okay, yeah, that's right. So, holy shit, Goldie has some back and traps. Obviously, she's a former user of testosterone. It's pretty obvious she has a permanent jaw change that does happen when women take testosterone. She has very bulbous shoulders, very well-developed traps and back that is normally not a female feature. That's an indicator of high testosterone levels, and it's highly unlikely, and I would argue her levels and how she looks is impossible as a female. So there you go. Like, there's some people who are just like obvious users but didn't get popped, and then people don't give a shit. Also, she was the first fight on the card, so no one really cares. Belbita with a smooth right hand put her down in the first round, caught her right on the button. Goldie was just acting second and taking way too much damage the entire fight. I thought Belbita had some really smooth looking stuff. Goldie was very stiff. It was a good fight, and then Goldie in the last 20 seconds throws Belbita on the ground, gets on top, and starts dropping elbows, and then people are like, oh, this could be... No, dude. She lost the first two rounds, by a lot, and the last round was not a 10-8, so none of that stuff. Oh, man. Yeah, one more thing. Like, I'm just going to say it again. Congrats to TJ, man. I really love the dude. I do. I think his fighting style, I don't think it was revolutionary, but I think the way he just blends things together, he's so smooth out there. He's one of the best, if not the best bantamweight of all time. Junichiro Kamijo is the guy who gave it to, I think gave that fourth round to TJ. Anywho, yeah, it's just, he's something else, man. It's just the ability to just change your game plan and be injured that bad and not be able to execute what you practice the entire time and still keep it that close and come out on top against a guy who's one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world on any given night. All right, TJ's one of the best. His career for me is very inspiring. Obviously, coming off of The Ultimate Fighter and then working his way back up, getting that fortuitous title shot because Javier Sansao fell out against Renan Barão, so he steps up and he was a 1400. He was a plus 1400 underdog, and he rocked I remember watching it live and seeing him rock Renan Barão and drop him with that right hand after bouncing back on his feet, and then finishing the fight in the fifth round. Just incredible is what it was. It's just one of those things, like his career, everything after that too. Yeah, he had a close fight with Dominic Cruz, arguably like the greatest of all time too. Like this is the argument here: is who's the best bantamweight of all time, and it's either him. Like no one puts Renan Barão in there, which I think is a little unfair because I think he should be in consideration. Rattled off like 9 wins in a row, didn't lose for fucking 7 years or whatever it was. Like regardless of the talent you're facing, like that's a pretty big accomplishment. And and Renan Barão was good. Like really good, and he fell off after USADA came in and probably drugs and whatever. Anyway, but no, TJ had his freaking number, and just smoked him twice. Man. Beat Joe Soto in the interim between those two because remember Renan Barão couldn't make weight or was trying to make weight and fell in the bathtub and hit his head. Who else did he? Cody Garbrandt went to go get his belt back. Knocked him out after getting rocked real bad in the first round. Knock him out again in the rematch. Dude, TJ's one of the best, man. He's incredible, and I'm so glad to see him back. Corey doesn't take a hit because of this loss. Obviously, it's a split decision. It's super close. One fight away, and he's at a title shot still. So Sandhagen, I wouldn't mind watching these guys run it back. Sandhagen is something else. I think he's one of the best. And like I said a million times, I think he's one of, if not the best in the world on any given night. All right, I'm glad to be back. I really am. I miss the fights. I miss recording. I love Wyoming. I want to go back there too. Maybe next time I'll bring my setup. I'll bring my setup and record somehow out there. All right, thank you guys so much for listening. Please, like I said earlier, like, subscribe. You're a champ for making it this far. I love you. I really do. Talking to you at some. It means a lot to me. Please engage. Comment down below. Tell me what you thought about the fights. Tell me what you think about what I'm doing. What can I do to improve? What would you like to hear? Those kind of things. I love interacting. I love talking about MMA, and yeah, just let me know, man. I appreciate it. Oh, I hope everybody has an awesome day. Glad to be back. Love y'all.